it's an opportunity for us, for Kav L'Noar, and for me to reach out and really be able to answer everybody's questions and concerns. Dealing with teens is never easy. I've had 4 and survived them, I think. I think they'd say that we've all survived. And so tonight's talk is going to be about dealing with how to help us deal with adolescents. Usually they're out of the house most of the time and come in for a little bit of time, and that kind of helps keep things in balance. And with this with the coronavirus and all of us being in self isolation at home with our kids, it's very tense. And so tonight I'm going to be addressing issues around dealing with our adolescents and the stresses involved in it, because we're really dealing with a very stressful and anxiety-provoking time. So let me give you just to give you an overview of what we're going to be doing. I'm going to be speaking for about 20-25 minutes. Well, I'm going to be talking about adolescents and what they're going through, what we're going through, and then giving you some strategies for dealing with your teens and connecting with them and helping the families work together. We are going to use the chat box during my session, because everybody is going to be muted. If you do have a thought or a question or something that you want to, don't hesitate to write it down in the chat box. I'm probably not going to see it until afterwards, but after my talk, I'm going to open up for questions and concerns. And what we'll do is I'll ask people to raise their hands, or if there's been a question in the chat, I'll respond then. And when they raise their hands, we will unmute you one at a time, and we can talk together, and everybody can listen. And I hope that we'll get through everybody's questions, at least for a beginning. Anyway, so let's begin. Well, I think we're going into about the 3rd week, finishing the 3rd week of our kids being home from school, which means that most of us have already been at least 2.5 weeks home with our kids. And that means that we're in a really stressful time. And I wanted, one of the things about this is that we're all in this together. It's a crazy thing that the entire world is dealing with this together, and it's a new reality, and a reality that we don't know when it's going to end. There's a lot of insecurity because we don't know what it's going to be like, and I think that all of us are anxious. And actually, I'm wondering about this. Maybe everybody could, anybody in the last week, or even the last day, how many of you have been anxious or stressed? Can you just raise a hand? How many of you have been anxious or stressed? Okay, all right. I see about 4 of you. Okay. Wow, that's great. All right, that is part of the new normal, is a certain level of anxiety and stress. Those people who are anxious and stressed, I want you to think about, what are the things that you're stressed or anxious about? What kinds of things? Because I could think of a lot of things. The anxiety is the new normal. I think that most people are feeling a lot tension, worried about the situation, worried about the future, worried about Pesach coming and not being with family, or not being able to have hachnasat orchim, worrying about shopping and going to Rami Levi, or what's going to be with their parents or older relatives. And that's on top of the big worries about safety and security and parnasa. And, as they're saying, we don't really know what the future is going to look like. the new normal may continue for a long time, and even when this is over, we don't know what is going to be ahead of us. And this is something that we all are dealing with, everyone. And I think it's something that we have to accept, that we're in a time of a lot of unsurety and unclarity. And unclarity generally, when things are not clear, we generally feel a lot more tension or anxiety. I would assume that a lot of you joined this session because you're also worried about your teens and how to help them, or what's going on at home. I think that that's something that's very legitimate. Might be worried about them being locked in the rooms, being on their computers, their social media, game nights, games, gaming at night, staying up really, really late, not being able to get them to fit into schedules, or not getting them out of, they're not getting up in the morning, and not davening, or not coming to meals with you. A lot of your teens might be moody, grumpy, reactive, or there might be a lot of complaining and fighting with siblings, and also with us. So there's a lot of good reason to be worried, because we don't really know how to deal with this new reality. We've never been at home with our kids. We weren't expected to be, we never planned to be homeschoolers, and to also be managing jobs, and working from home, and feeding our kids meals, and keeping up with Zoom classes for each of our kids. And it's not an easy time. So one of the things I think that I want to start with in terms of stress and anxiety and worry is that, as with there's a model that I like to use, and an analogy that I like to use when I'm talking to parents, is that especially in dealing with stressful times, and this is one of the most stressful that many of us, this new reality is something that we've never experienced before, is that we really have to figure out how to manage our own anxiety before we deal with our kids. It's kind of like on the airplane, when they explain to you that when the oxygen bag drops from the ceiling, that you're supposed to put it on yourself first, and take care of yourself first, and then take care of your kids. And so I think that it's important for us to recognize when we are getting stressed and what we're getting stressed about. There's been a lot of great articles coming out, and I'm sure everybody from social media and the newspapers and everything are seeing a lot of great tips about what to do with your kids, how to have activities with them, all kinds of creative things. And one of the things that they talk about is how important it is to have a schedule, to get up to continue getting up and getting your kids up on time, and getting dressed and having meals. And I wanted to start out by talking about the fact that schedules are really great, and they're a really good idea, and they work generally in our regular lives. In our old normal lives, they worked. We got up, our alarms got up, we knew how much time we needed to get ready before we got our kids up, what we needed to do before we got out the door and get them out of the door, and where everybody was supposed to be. And there was a real seder, an order to our lives. And that order has kind of gone out the window, and we're really having to create a new order from scratch. And so when we're talking about schedules, I think one of the most important things to remember is that they're a great idea for creating predictability and for grounding us, but we're not going to be perfect. We're going to need to be flexible, because this is such a different time. And so just for ourselves, as well as for our kids, we have to acknowledge that we're not going to be perfect. And it's something that I was listening to a talk a couple of nights ago of a psychologist in New York, who she made a really important point that we need to, her name is Dr. Laurie Evans, she's a psychologist in New York, and she talked about aiming for imperfection, that we don't want to look to be perfect. As soon as we start to expect ourselves to be perfect, we are going to raise the stress and the anxiety for ourselves and in our households. And so the goal here right now, especially in this new normal, is to aim for imperfection. Things are going to take time. They're not always going to be smooth. Kids are going to react. We're all a bunch of, in a certain sense, like a ball, like the balls what's it called? A pinball machine. We bounce off of each other. You know, a lot of us live in tight quarters in apartments where there isn't a lot of privacy, where we're ending up working. Everybody's working out in the main area, or some people are working and some people need quiet. And so we need to be able to take care of ourselves and take a lot of deep breaths and give space for things not to be just even if we planned that great schedule where the kids are going to get up and they're going to do their Zoom sessions, but I have to be in 3 different places at once and they're all in the same house. And I've got to be working and I've got to be with this kid and that kid and that kid and helping them with homework. And I think we need to give ourselves, cut ourselves a lot of slack. Cut ourselves slack and cut our kids slack. And know that, you know, all those of us that are still working and working from home, that everybody else is in the same boat. And whether it's our bosses or our colleagues or our clients, that when there's an interruption, a kid needs us, something happens, that we sometimes have to get off the phone or get off the computer or say, I need to stop now. And we need to remember that we're all in the same boat. And just like we're having this, the person on the other side is also, in all likelihood, is sitting in a very similar situation in their own home, dealing with this really new situation. And so I want to remind everyone that also in our responses, we have to be forgiving to ourselves. We're not always going to respond perfectly to every situation. You know, I could only imagine that people will think, oh, well, she's got some really great ideas. I want to take them on. Believe me, I'm not perfect either, and I don't always respond. I've learned a lot from over the 4 kids that I've brought up. I've learned a lot from my own mistakes, and so what I'm sharing with you this evening are things that come from both what I know to be right and also what I do wrong sometimes also. So in that vein, also, just like with a lot of the articles that have great suggestions, lots of really great suggestions, that they won't necessarily work all the time with everyone in our houses. And what we're doing here is really providing a guidepost. And this is an experiment. It's really an experiment. And each one of us has to look at it as an experiment, that we're trying to do things and that we're learning as we go. All of us are learning. And that we have to give ourselves permission not to be perfect. Okay, so let me talk a little bit about what's going on with our kids and what might be on your minds, on your concerns. First of all, what's going on for adolescents? So, as we probably know, those of you that have teens at home, teens are not used to being home 24/7, and they don't really like it. Adolescence is really a period of time when it's appropriate for teens to strive for independence, for autonomy. They want to make their own decisions. They want to be on their own. And so probably even before this, they were either out with friends at their Kav L'Noar, or hanging out with friends, or going places, or doing their chugim, or other activities, or playing ball, playing football. Baseball season was supposed to start really soon. And all of that has ended like that. It just stopped, shut down in a matter of, from today to tomorrow, from Purim to a few days later, it all ended. And all that freedom and all that autonomy that they were trying to have, and independence, even while we as parents might be trying to get them back home and worried about what they're doing out there. For them, the healthy thing and the good thing for them was having that space and breath to be able to look out and do their own thing and try things on their own. And that was healthy. And right now, all of a sudden, their wings have been totally clipped. There's no more B'nai Akiva. There are no more Tiyulim. There's no more Madrichim. They're not able to plan the activities or the things that they usually do. They're not able to get together with their friends. And this is really, really tough. And I would imagine that for some of the teens, they're really balking at it. One thing that we know about teens is that because of the desire for autonomy and independence, at the same time, there are parts of their brains that are pushing them to that they kind of feel kind of invincible, like I can do anything. And so this idea of a rule that I have to stay home and I'm only allowed to go 100 meters outside of my house for teens is really the antithesis of what they believe, because they really do believe that nothing's going to happen to me. I can be safe. They also know. They read, they're on the media, they know, they hear that most of the people who get really, really ill are over the age of 60, that the likelihood is that they're going to, even if they get sick, it's not going to be dangerous, and they're going to be careful anyway, and they know how to take care of themselves. And that's a real challenge, because now we're saying to them, I'm sorry, you can't go out. And for some of those teens, they're going to balk, and some of them will reject, and they'll go out anyway. And so one of the worries and the concerns is, how do we talk to our kids about this? How do we talk about the concern and the realities without making them too anxious? Because you also have the kids that are probably on the other side that are also very anxious, and they're on top of their parents to wash their hands, and you didn't do this, and don't bring the groceries in, and we have to wash every fruit and every vegetable. Did you wash them yet? Did you check into them? Did you check them? How do we know it's safe? And so you probably are having kids that are on the other side that are also feeling very fearful. Because for them, and this is another piece of adolescence, is that adolescents need a lot of a feeling of control. I think we all do. But part of that independence is this need to feel in control. And when somebody tells me that, so this whole thing is, for all of us, it's not in our control. There's not a lot that we can do about it other than within our own Daled Amot, within our home. And part of that is protecting ourselves and our families by following the rules, by doing what the Mitzvot HaBriyut has put out as regulations, and following them to the best of our abilities, and trying to help our kids to understand why it's important, even though it's goes so much against the grain. One of the things that is really important to also stress about adolescents, about teenagers, is how important their friends are. What a significant role friendship plays for teens. For you and I, for me, if I don't speak to my friends in a week, I don't go crazy. So now I'm not seeing them, so I'll WhatsApp them once a week. We might talk on the phone a little bit, but I don't have that same feeling of anxiety that teens feel when they don't see their friends. I was talking to a client today who was anxious just about the fact that she's been talking about this for a while, that she can't get together with her friends. And when she can't get together with her friends, and then they don't answer the WhatsApp, when she does, she gets worried already. She's already worried about whether they're still there, because for teens, their friends become their mirror of who they are. They are validating for them, and they help them feel wanted, feel desired, feel valued. And when the actual seeing is not there, and when that's taken away, then they feel helpless and they feel out of control. And And I think that a lot of that plays itself out then at home, because the last place that teens want to be is stuck at home with their families 24/7. To be around their younger siblings all the time can make them feel infantilized. Not that you're doing that, but they themselves feel like, oh my God, I'm regressing. I'm becoming a child again. I have to hang. Where are my friends? Where are the peers? And that's a real struggle for them. And a struggle for us as well, because I think that it plays itself out in how they react to us. And I think one of the things that we really need to do is to be able to understand what they're going through, and have compassion for it. It's real. This is very real for them. And for a lot of them, you could say that it's almost traumatic. Not being able to get out of the house. It feels like they're in prison, like they're in solitary confinement. At the same time, they don't necessarily want to hang out with us, their parents or their siblings, because that's not where they want to get their meaning and their recognition. So that being said, what do we do? What do we do to help them? So one of the things that I think is really important is to begin a dialogue. Things that they're upset about, to be able to acknowledge them, to be able to, what we would call, have empathy for them, to be able to say, yeah, it really stinks that baseball's not starting now. It really stinks that you're not able to go out for the football team, that you're not able to play football or basketball, or that you're not able to get to your taekwondo chug. It really stinks. It stinks that you're missing out on the vacation. This week is supposed to start vacation. We're supposed to be going out, going camping, or going to Tel Aviv and going to the beach, or going to the movies. We're stuck at home, and it stinks. And I think that when you are able to say, I get it. It really is disappointing. It's really sad, and you're probably and sometimes you get mad about that. That's helpful for teens, to know that you understand them, because they also, part of this is that could go on indefinitely from their perspective, and from ours also. We don't know how long. We can say, it's going to end. We know that someday it will end. For teens, it feels just endless. Every day feels more endless than the rest. So talking to them, validating their feelings, being able to name their feelings. That kids do not necessarily come out and say, I'm really angry about X, Y, and Z. I'm really angry that I missed going to that activity with my B'nai Akiva, or running that program that I was running, or next week is supposed to be Machaneh, and I had it all planned, and we were going to have this amazing Machaneh, and now it's all gone. And what do I have now? And so being able to put words to their feelings is really the first step to helping to connect with them. The next step is, though, that then to say, I know that it really is hard, and we're all in this, everybody's dealing with this, but it's hard for you. I want to be able to think with you about what we can do that can't replace it, but that can be something else that you can do instead, something that can help you. And to brainstorm with them, not to tell them what to do, because that takes away their control, but to ask them, perhaps, if you would want, we could try and think of some ways, some ideas of some things that we can do, because there's a sense of powerlessness. And when people are anxious and feel out of control, they often shut down and they can't think. They get into anxious mode and they just can't think out of that. Know that sometimes when they're reacting to a sibling, that it might not have anything to do with the sibling. It might have to do with something that's going on with them. We're living at a time when, thank God, at least they can connect with their friends on social media. And I think that social media has taken, for them, is a lifeline. And that means that we really, as much as we can be concerned about the amount of time, and I think that a lot of parents are very worried about their kids being getting more addicted to their phones and to their social media and to their games. Right now, we have to be a little bit more flexible with that because it really is their lifeline. But what can we do? I think that it still is important to have discussions with them about how they use their social media and their devices, what they're using it for, and to talk about the need for different kinds of activities. That you understand that being in touch with their friends is really, really important, but that it's important also to take breaks, and that we can think about other things to do during those breaks, that it's important to do some kind of physical activity, or that there are responsibilities at home that they can do, and to kind of help them think together with you to offer, how can we make this so that there's also schoolwork, that you have schoolwork to do, giving them a sense of control and choice. And one of the things that is really important is that they need to feel that they are in control of what they do and when they do it. So that means that when we're talking about things like things that we want them to do or that we want to encourage them to do, that we don't want to make it use controlling language. We don't want to tell them what to do. We want to talk about what they can do and give them options and choices so that they're part of the process of making the decision. When am I going to study? Yes, I have schoolwork, it's important. When are you going to study? Can you take breaks? We talk about how much time is reasonable and ask them before. One of the things that I often talk about with with people is how important it is to listen to your kids first, to ask them, what do you think? How much time do you think is reasonable? What kind of breaks do you think? How much time would you need of a break? Could you take of a break to do homework? If you have schoolwork, maybe it's a half an hour and then a half an hour of social media and then go back on for an hour, depending on, and giving them, make it a dialogue. Make it something that they're able to feel that they're in control of it. Staying out, you're concerned about how much they're on and what they're doing on, because we are concerned about the safety issues still and what they're doing on their computers, on their devices. And one of the things, this isn't a talk on our social media and talking to kids about that, but I would like to say that one of the things that's really important is to ask them about what they're seeing and what they're doing on there, who they're, what are they doing, what kind of games, and if they're playing games, then ask, could I look, could I see, could I play with you, can you show me things that you're doing. Engage in a conversation. What do you like about it? What's good about that for you? Could you see a downside? Could you see a downside of staying on for, on Fortnite for 10 hours straight without eating, without drinking, and have a dialogue about Fortnite? What's good about it, what it makes them feel, how they're connected to other people. That sense of joining them and understanding also helps you then be able to say, there's another side to this. What about the fact that you're not doing anything else, or that there's other things that could be done? One of the things that I think we hear a lot from kids is, I'm bored. I don't have anything else to do. There's nothing else to do other than be on our devices. And devices have really taken over other activities. And it is one of the things that we need to, that could be a silver lining, is starting to do other things. To be able to suggest and say, well, maybe we could try a different activity. There's things that you can do online that learn something new, learn how to play guitar, learn how to draw comics, learn how to build some kind of electronic thing. to create more space, even within what they know and what's familiar to them, which is the computer, which are their devices. I think it is important to talk to kids about the need for sleep and for having physical activities, and teens may or may not respond positively to everything that you're saying, but putting it out there is part of is opening up for a discussion. And we have to not be afraid to open up, even if our kids are not going to respond by saying, thanks a lot, Mom, thanks a lot, Dad, for this important conversation. The conversations need to take place. I think that it's really important to make sure that that you do things with the family, whether your teens are involved or not. You're going to have teens that aren't going to be interested. Okay, you can invite them, you can welcome them. Don't hesitate to put the puzzles out on the table and the games out on the table, and they may not come. They may not come at first, but eventually they might just wake up, come out, look and see what's going on, stand on the side. The planned family activity that you want to do, whether it's a movie night or a game night or doing a salsa video or some other kind of an activity, a group family activity, cooking together. They may not bite right away, but the likelihood, if you don't bug them too much about it and just let it happen, is that they may come out and become more curious and eventually want to be involved in that, especially in a movie night, but maybe in some other things also. I think that it is important for teens to be given responsibility, but to give it in a way that they have a choice. If it's getting ready for Pesach, to be able to make a list and say, I need you to take responsibility for some of these things. What do you want to take responsibility for? Whether it's polishing the silver, whether it's watching some siblings so that you can get some work done, and that they define the time within your time frame, but with some flexibility. The other thing that I just want to, I guess I want to end with is remembering that we need to take care of ourselves first, which means that we need to breathe and we need to do our own physical activity and to take breaks and to give ourselves some time alone and away so that we can be there for our kids also. When there's a tense situation, take a step back, remove yourself, wait to see if it'll figure itself out, and then come back when you feel like you've got your oxygen mask on and you can deal with it in a calmer way without the stress of your own stresses getting involved also. All right. I think I've talked for about a half an hour, so I'm going to open things up now for questions. Questions that you have, as I said beforehand, you can either write. I see that there are some people who've written on the chat, and I can start with some of them. If you have questions that you haven't written on the chat and you want to be able to voice them with me, raise your hand and I'll be able to unmute you so that you can ask the question. But I'm going to start with the questions that have been asked already. Okay, the first one was, my kids with teens asked me to tune in for them and take notes. Oh, okay. So I don't know whether you have questions. Let's see.
I think a lot of these are logistical points.
Yes, yeah, okay. All right, so anyone have questions right now? Remember to press on the chat button if you want to. Yes, Michal. Okay, Michal, you're unmuted. What's your question?
Okay, so my daughter actually today, she said, I feel like I have very, very little control over my life. And all these things that you just said totally resonated. And I actually told her maybe she could think of what she does have control over, to make a list of the things that she does have control. After I validated and I said, obviously it's a very uncertain time. We have no idea when this is going to end. But I said, maybe you could make a list of what you do have control of. And it's more than they think. Because if you really itemize it,
Right.
there are things. And also maybe
Right.
what brings you happiness besides, like, what makes you happy inside. Because she said she feels she has no control over anything, and she's just totally unhappy because she can't go and see her friends. Everything that you said, like they can't even see each other, meet at the park and stand 6 feet apart. Like,
Right.
so
Right.
what, I mean, besides these things and sort of ideas that I came up with, is there any other suggestion you have? I mean, this is really the crux of the issue, I think, that they feel that they have no control.
Right, right. Absolutely. This sense of lack of just no control that we also feel. One of the things that we can talk about is also, I liked your idea of making a list. I think that it once, and there's that and asking her to do that first, again, listening to her and her feelings. I think that you can also share things that you also feel like might not be in control, but that you have noticed that you're in more control than you realized. To be able to validate by saying that I also feel that way. You're not alone.
Totally. Yeah.
And the other thing that I think is really important is to highly, there are a lot of really good stories coming out now of really positive things. When I was listening to this psychologist the other day, one of the things she talked about was being a good news junkie. To look for and talk about the good stories or those nice things that happen, to give that there are some, because it's very scary. We're hearing more and more, and there's a certain sense we're safe in our homes. We're safe in our Dalit, we're safe, but out there, unfortunately, somebody dropped.
Okay.
More and more people are being touched by the deaths, and it's very, very scary.
Right.
And the kids are hearing about it and knowing about it, whether it's on the news or people that we know. We're more and more worried about that, and they're worried too. So we do have to talk about that also, the worry and what we're doing to make ourselves feel in control, and the things in our house that we can do to give ourselves control, like you said, is maybe one thing that I know that I did after the first week that I was working and managing. I do have my adult kids, some of them are home, and as I said, every night everybody's